Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Whip Finish Wednesday. Katie and I are really excited to once again have everyone back here this evening, hanging out with us as we're tying some flies and telling a few jokes here and there. We're so glad to see everyone hopping on with us and chatting along and asking questions and just generally hanging out with us this Wednesday night. What's up, Bill? Good to see you hanging out this evening. So this evening we've got a fun pattern to tie. Last week we were tying the straggle bugger. It is a relatively simple fly. Hey, Mike. Um, Relatively simple fly. Just a tail, some straggle string, maybe a little flash, maybe a little dubbing in the front, and jig hook and a bead, and that's it. And one of the questions we got, hey, Ken, good day down in Australia. Jimmy Roop, always fun to see you. And Helena, nice to see you. Al Canton, um, and Tom F. Fly. I don't recognize Tom F. Fly. So hello and welcome to Tom. Um, but one of the questions we got was what are some other flies, particularly dry flies, that you would tie with straggle string? And the first one that came to mind was the Stragulator, and for a few different reasons here locally, anyway. Hey, Jason, Semper to you too, and Dave Hall, Al, Mike, or Mike, Katie, Mike, Katie, Mike, Katie, Al is saying hello to you in particular. Um, and hey, Troy. So the straddle string works really well, and the stimulator is the abdomen part of the fly. But the main reason I like using straggle string on that part of the fly is on smaller stimulators, which is typically what I'm throwing, about a size 16, sometimes 18, but relatively smaller stimulators. It can be hard to find that rear hackle that's small enough so it doesn't go much past the bend of the hook, and just don't slapping some straggle string on there gives it nice flash, and it also doesn't impede the hookability of the pattern. The fish love it, and it's just a good substitute for regular hackle wire and dubbing. So that's what we're going to tie tonight, the straggle stringer. What's up, Mr. Barnes? Patrick, thanks for pointing out Helena's post with her winnings today. Thank you very much. And Ricky, we are doing grand. And everyone's saying hey to Gary. So what's up? So over on my right, your left, we have my beautiful bride, Katie. And she is excited to later on show some pictures and maybe do a giveaway. I don't know. We'll see how the night progresses. And what's up, Josh Varner? So Josh, who just checked in, is who we're going to be using some of his deer hair this evening and going over just some of the benefits of having really high quality deer hair when you're doing especially smaller flies, but larger flies as well. And and I asked Josh to be here so he could answer your all's questions about preparation, grading, any questions at all about deer hair, and how he gets it ready for fly tying. I know he gets some of his stuff from North Carolina, but he gets a lot of it, and apparently his good stuff comes from Montana. He is based in, I believe, North Carolina. But he has some phenomenal deer hair. So with that said, hey Scott with Lid Rig, yep, that's I've got the skills shirt. I point the right side. Yep, got the skills shirt on, and what's up, Mark? Oh, icy storm! I tell you what, last week or week before, it was like 4 degrees outside. Yesterday, I was trimming the hedge. I could have a short sleeve shirt on. I was sweating. It was probably close to 70 outside. So the weather has definitely changed quite a bit. Al, you're correct. Josh is a man with the deer hair. Okay, so with that said, let's switch over to the vise and we'll show the fly we're going to tie in a few different variations of it. So this is the Stragulator right here. And as you can see, I've got some yellow. This is actually, let me double check, make sure I'm telling you right, golden straw hackle. We've got the bleached deer hair wing, same tail, and straggle string, like a yellow straggle string body. There's a little bit of bright yellow dubbing on the thorax of the fly. So relatively simple pattern, but there are quite a few steps and a few things to keep in mind when you're tying this. I do have another variation here, just a slight color. Actually, the one I just had in the vise was more orange. This is more yellow here. And both these are size 16, so they're relatively small. The only difference is the color of the straddle string on that one. And I did tie this one just a few minutes ago. This is a giant size 14, huge. And this has a natural deer hair wing and tail and olive for the straggle string body with grizzly hackle. So, Ore, what's up? And little trick for the underwing as well that I'll go over. So, with that said, we'll get to tying a quick one. So before we actually tie one, I want to go over some techniques. And one of my pet peeves is when I'm watching people tie flies, they'll be like, okay, this is supposed to be a size 16, but we're going to tie it in a size 10 just so you all can see better. I'm like, well, gosh, with the fancy cameras and everything else these days, you don't have to tie anything but the real deal these days. So we're not going to tie anything super big just so you can see it, because I think you all can see it pretty well right now. At least you can see that hook. The hook is an Ahrex Freshwater 530 and a size 16 right here. And the reason I'm using the 530 and not the 531 is I like to throw droppers with these. So you can see it has a teeny tiny barb. It is a little micro barb on there that I can easily crush down if I don't want to use it. But it is nice having that barb there for droppers. It'll help that dropper stay on. But we want to go over some stuff while Josh is here about deer hair. So you all ask any questions that you would like to Josh, and I'm not seeing the comments right now, so if I need to restart mine, Katie, you can let me know. So throughout all the flies, I'm going to be using Semperfli Nano Silk in 12-aught, which is 50 denier. That's what I'm going to be tying with. And a lot of times I'll use, if you use Nano Silk, I would highly suggest you get some of their the wax that's for Nano Silk. It's really hard. It does change the color of the thread, but it doesn't add any like extra stickiness. Couldn't find any straggle string at local shops. What would you say would be another fun alternative? I don't know of an alternative to straggle string. Like I said last week, you can just use dubbing and pick it out a bunch. I know Jay Soccer's got a good, or should have a good selection of it. Deer hose, does it have to be processed before the hide is used for fly tying? Man, that might be a good question for Josh. However, if Katie was answering the question, yes, it has to be processed before it comes inside. So wouldn't you agree, honey? If I found a deer on the side of the road, it would have to be processed before I brought it inside?
Yes, all animal parts, hair, every bit of it needs to be quote unquote processed before it comes inside the house. Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to do is with the Nano Silk, you see it's black now. That's because that wax is on there. I'm going to start it right here. You want to call it the 60% mark, that's fine. But where I start my thread is so important, because I'm going to have from here to here is going to be my body, and from here to the front is going to be where a wing comes up, and the thorax and the hackle and everything. So proportions on stimulators, even when you even when you're tying big ones, but especially on the small ones, proportions are so important, because you don't want the the thorax to be way far back, but you also want to give yourself enough room to be able to put some turns of hackle in there. And Bill, I hope Josh is still on here, and if he's not, I know you can get his hair over at Charlie's Fly Box, and you can get it at what's the Kelly Gallup's place? Slide. Yeah, there he is. Shit, it's not problem. Yes, that's the smell is what I was talking about, Josh. Katie would kill me. So now this is kind of a beat up piece that I've been. Let's see if I can pull it out so you can see it really nicely. So as you can see, there's some of the fibers are a little messed up there, but you see how the actual deer hair fibers are nice and straight. Of course, I'm not really showing you a good spot of it. There we go. This, I don't know how I would grade this as far as it's not short, fine. It's not long. It's somewhere in between. I would prefer it to be a little shorter. And look, well, I'll show you here in a minute. Than too long, because I feel like the shorter the fiber, the shorter the tips. So regardless of where you get your deer hair, how you process it, how you prepare it is really important. So I just cut a piece off right from the base of the hide. I'm gonna hold it my fingertips by the tips, and I twist it like that, and that opens up the fibers. See how that popped it open? It's much nicer than deer hair I can get. It is. Sorry, so I've opened up the fibers, and I'll take my comb, and I'll just comb it out. So I'm getting not all the broken ends, not all the broken fibers, but I'm getting the under fur out of there. So you can see a little bit of fuzz there. That's one thing that's nice about Josh's hair. There's not a whole lot of junk to comb out, but you want to comb it all out, because when I stack it, I've got a little too much. Pull some of it out. When I stack it, all that under fur and the bent ends, broken ends and stuff, that will make it where it doesn't stack very well. Also, the under fur will absorb water. So one of the things with deer hair is you want it to help the fly float. And if it has that under fur in there, it's not going to float very well. So let's switch over to the hook real quick, and we'll show you what we got. So you can see, maybe just there we go. So you see how the tips are nice and straight. I've got one broken end there. So the way I get rid of that is I just pull it out. See, everything's nice and straight. I just pluck just that one out of there. So now we've got a really nice stack. And let's pull out just a little bit of this. It's still too much for the tail. So the way I'm going to tie this in, let's get rid of that, whatever that is there, is I'm going to set my bunch right on top of the hook shank and have it go as long as I want it to go. So one of the things that I see when people are tying stimulators or patterns similar to it is they'll make the tail too long. It'll be this long or that long. And it's just supposed to be a short little nub of a tail. It's not supposed to be anything giant. So I'm going to grab it with my other hand and pinch it on top of the hook shank. And then I take my thread and I do a couple wraps and pull till it flares. So see how that flared out nicely? I'm going to pull out, go through, and all this is doing, get rid of this one thing, one fiber. All this is doing is making it to where the bunch isn't going to spin around the hook shank, at least not the front of the bundle anyway. So now I'll take this. I'm going to cut these off close. Now we've got a nice little thing. Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're going to have a hard time, Ken, getting this in Australia. But, if you absolutely cannot get Josh's hair, which a lot of us can't, unless you order it from the shops I was mentioning a minute ago, probably the best alternative that you can commercially get in most places would be Nature Spirit. And that's definitely a good alternative. So you see how I went down with open spiral wraps and then came back up. I didn't pull super, super tight on this. So but I've got it just tight enough so it's secured on the hook shank. And you see how my tail is nice and straight. We've got everything all. Never had a bad feel. Yeah, so that's how we do our tail. I'm sitting here watching the comments and going back and forth. Okay, so the straggle string. We'll pull out a piece here, and once again, this is from just a little sample card here. I really need to order some straggle string, Gary. One of these days.
I can't really think of anything like maybe like micro Chanel, like the smallest kind.
Maybe.
It's still not exactly the same though.
No, one of the nice things, that's what I was showing last week with the straggle legs. The core is just thinner, just I don't want to say too thin, but it's just thin enough so you can't really use the straggle legs as a substitute either. So just do like a nice buggy. Just do a nice buggy dubbing. Just keep it nice and thin and brush it out so you'll have some of the pickiness. So remember the fly we tied last week. We tied a tail in, and then we did this exact same thing. We tied straggle string in. I'm going to hold the tail when I pull it tight because I don't want that to spin around. And I'm going to do touching wraps. If you want to, you could do like a alternate color thread body, and you can do open spiral wraps. And that will, let's go back over this. That will give you kind of a bumblebee looking thing with yellow anyway. It'll show little segmentations. All right, so put about 3 wraps here, pull this tight. And so basically, if there's a bead on here and that was a marabou tail, we just tied the same fly we tied last week. Bring this back to the rear. One of the reasons I like using the nano silk for this pattern is I can put all those wraps on there and I'm not building any bulk. So what's borax? Is that where you're going to put on the deer hide, honey?
That's what you use to clean deer hair.
Yeah. Okay, so.
And to make slime.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's worth getting because if you don't use it for deer hair, you can always make slime.
That's right. Okay, so I said there's a secret to my underwing, and speaking of Charlie Craven, if you will look, he has a video tutorial on macrame yarn, and that is. We'll switch over to the big thing. So I've got this in a bunch of different colors. And you can get this on Amazon. This is just Bonnie craft cord. You switch over to the either side or to me. There we go.
I'm sorry, I was chatting with Nan.
Oh.
I can't do everything.
So I've got this in probably a dozen different colors, this Bonnie craft cord. And this is basically the same as macrame yarn. It says somewhere that you can fuse it together. So it's basically just plastic cord. It's 100% polypropylene fibers. And you can take this and you can get like, say you wanted yellow, you can get yellow.
I'm just going to put it on the big camera because that's a big, giant thing.
And you can put whatever colors you want to and mix them together. So I've got this here that is half yellow, half white. I've got this one that is 2/3 yellow, 1/3 white here. So you can see the little bit difference. And this one is half white, half gray.
Is that what you're brushing out with the cat brush?
Yep. And all sorts of different stuff. So you can make all different colors of it, but this works really well for an underwing. So I'm going to pull this out, cut off somewhat of a square end, somewhat. Tie this in. I'm going to wax my thread one more time. So grip these fibers nicely. And this is just nano silk or GSP wax. And like I said, it works really good. Put one wrap in there, then kind of pull that to length. Wrap back. wrap forward.
It kind of looks like EP fibers, but
yeah, it's very similar to EP, but for about the same price, I think that's like $15 or so for one of those things. It is literally a lifetime supply. Whenever we go to shows, and when we're tying at Orvis or tying wherever, we always give a bunch of it away because there's more of it than we'll ever use. All right, so we got that tied in.
What is it called again?
Bonnie braid.
Braid, okay.
There you go. Bonnie craft cord. And you can find it on Amazon, but there's a couple different kinds. You don't want to get the cotton stuff. You want the polypropylene stuff, not the cotton. I mean, I've probably got $100 or so in there just so I can mix colors, but not even $100, but it's literally a lifetime supply. Okay, so as you see, I've got this big old long piece tied in. We'll switch back over to the fly itself. I'm gonna take this because it'll kind of kink up again. I'm gonna cut it a little bit long, and there's our underwing. And I can mash this down if I wanted to. I could put a little figure eight in there and split them into two wings, but I'm fine with it just like that. And this one give it a nice flash underneath. It'll repel the water. The water will come off really, really easily. It'll help with obviously help the flotation of it, and it just works pretty well. Nana, thankfully. I say thankfully because she is a bit of a distraction, but Misha has not made an appearance tonight.
She's more of a distraction than I am.
Yeah. All right, so let's cut so let's switch over to the materials camera, please. All right, so we've got our deer hair here. So the way I cut this is I'll use my scissors and I'll stick it in and kind of pull up however much I think I need. And I've kind of got a bad habit of pulling out more than I do need. I cut it right at the base, hold it by the tips, because if there's anything broken in the middle, I want it to come out. So I'll hold it pretty much right by the tips, pull out anything that automatically comes out. Same thing, twist it. And since we put that underwing in there, we don't need to have a huge, thick, heavy overwing. So, oh, Ken, you're so nice.
Yes. I have friends over here.
All right, so when you're stacking, I've got 3 different stackers sitting here. Technically, I've got 5 different stackers because I can't find this tube. I'm sure it's around somewhere, but each of the Renzetti ones are 2 different sizes because there's 2 tubes. So you want to use the smallest diameter tube that you can get by with. And what I mean by that is if I were to stack, if I were to stack this little stack in this stacker, it wouldn't stack very well. But on the other hand, if I were to stack a big clump of deer hair in this stacker, it definitely wouldn't stack well because I'd be jamming it down in there. So having the right size stacker for what you're using is very important. So in this case, I want to use this Renzetti that this is the double-ended micro stacker, I believe. But the bigger of the 2 sizes will work well if I don't drop them everywhere. There we go.
And don't do it in the library.
Yes, the library can be.
It's not a good place to.
Shh.
Yeah, you'll get a lot of shh.
Okay. So now we'll pull that out, and you can see we'll switch back to there. See how nice it looks in the hook. Maybe there we go. See how those tips are lined up really nicely. I'll pull this out. And this is probably one of the steps I'm going to show just on its own in a few minutes. So I've got my stack here. I want to set it parallel with the hook shank. And I want the wing to be just a touch shorter than the tail. So see how the wing's just a little bit shorter than the tail? Set it right on top. Pinch everything. Uncord my thread a bit. I'm going to put 1, right in front of it 2, right in front of it 3. And I'll pull tight. It flares it all out nicely. And I've held it with my left hand the whole time. So now I'm going to let go. I'm going to pull up some of the fibers, put a wrap through, and bring my thread forward, pull tight. Bring my thread forward, pull tight. Just keep doing this until I'm out of hair, and I'm working up towards the hook eye. Let that one go. Okay. So that's what we've got so far. That's probably the most difficult part about this fly is getting the wing set correctly. I'm going to take this, take my scissors, push them all the way down, all the way to the base, cut that off. Then I'll look and see. Usually I miss 1 or 2 fibers. In this case, I pretty much have them. Cut a little bit on this side, a little bit on that side, push everything down. Now, if you notice, I don't know, a few years ago, I tried to make my flies super, super like Instagram pretty and everything, made them all really nice, but I've kind of changed. Not that this isn't a pretty looking wing, but the wing sits down on the body a lot more than other pictures that you'll see. And that's because if, let's get this out so you can see. If the water line is right here, yeah, right there with the eye of the hook, that's where the water is. See how my wing is touching would be just about touching the water right there. If my wing was like a nice little beautiful bunch going back like this, and my water line was right there, see how the wing's not really going to help much with the flotation of it?
It does nothing.
So I want that wing to kind of to be down and the underwing to be down. So it helps more with the flotation of the fly. There we go, like that. Something like that. If I can't get the thread lined up just right. Get it. But you get what I'm saying. All right. So now I'm going to uncord my thread because I want it to be nice and flat. And I'm going to bring it back with kind of loose wraps. Let's cut this one fiber here. Let's bring it back like this. So Josh, if you're still on here, I told everyone that Charlie's Fly Box and Kelly Gallup's place were the 2 places to get your deer hair. Is there anywhere else they can purchase your deer hair from? And if you're not on here, that's fine too. And Katie, you can tell me if I need to restart this right here, okay? Do I need to?
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I did pull one fiber off, and this is from a Whiting Farms cape, just a regular red label cape. And this is the white dyed golden straw is the color. So let's see if I've got I always like to check my hackle length, make sure it's right. See how it goes just below the hook point? That's perfect. That's what I'm looking for. So Ken, as you're watching this, what is what do you feel like the most difficult step of this pattern is so far? So all I'm doing right now while Ken's answering is pulling off some of the fibers off the stem, just stripping them off. And if I want to look a little bit fancier, a little bit nicer, I'll pull a little bit of the leading edge fibers. So like that. See how I've got just a handful of fibers pulled off the one side. Just start with Schultz Outfitters. Oh, Living Waters. That's Josh over at Living Waters, isn't it? So we know Josh. I'll bring this in. But you don't sell direct, if I remember correctly. You're too busy, which is a good thing. You're too busy dyeing and prepping hair. And are you going to move to Montana here next little bit? Because if you're going to move close to Kelly Gallup's place, I think I might come up and visit you and Not that I haven't wanted to visit you in North Carolina, but that would be quite the trip to get back out there. Katie and I, it wasn't last summer, it was 2 summers ago. We took 2 trips there. And the last time we went, we stayed at Kelly Gallup's shop cabin, the one that's attached to the shop. Chris at Living Waters got me Chris. Chris, that's it, not Josh. Make John's skills come to life.
Aw,
yeah, trust me,
cute.
Al, I need all the help I can get. So now I'm going to put some, I'm using the Superfly K-Pock, and this is fluorescent yellow. And one of the keys to having your hackle nice is, as you've heard me say before, a nice smooth underbody. So that's kind of what I've got. Kind of, you see some of the deer hair sticking out, and that's fine. But the dubbing I want to be very smooth. I want to be uniform and smooth. If I didn't say it needs to be smooth, then I'll say it again. So, Josh, when you get your deer, I'm sure you've got lots of different places you get it from. I've seen some of those pictures you posted where you get a bunch of it at one time. But do you put it like in a freezer before you start working with it, or how? Like, of all the deer hair that you get, how much of it actually makes it to the package itself, to what you sell, versus like just doesn't make the cut?
That's a good question. I would love to see the process, not in real life, but like on a video or maybe even pictures from beginning to end.
Okay, so we've got our it's Josh's trying to move back to Montana. Come on out. No, that sounds like fun. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see there, but I've got a nice, see how the dubbing noodle is consistent. It's one thickness. So I'm going to bring it back up. I'm going to try to work on this one fiber there. Got it? And my first wrap, I'm going to go behind that hackle fiber, and probably the second one too, because the dubbing didn't really start until I got there. So now I'm doing touching wraps back up to the front. And if it kind of spaces out a little bit like it just did, that's okay. And I've got a little bit too much, so I'm going to pull it off, because I want to leave room to, actually I'm going to pull it off a little bit more and whisper to it. It's all about whispering to your fly.
You have to encourage it.
Yes. All right. So let's see how that looks now. So that looks pretty good. So I want to make sure that my dubbing here matches up. There's not a gap here between my straggle string and the dubbing. Just shot at deep origin. Okay. Oh my gosh. Superior County stuff. It's not move. Yeah. Okay. So another thing I'll do is, like, say I wanted a little red hot spot on the front. I'll do this now, so it gives it time for that marker to dry. And I'll just go ahead and paint the nano silk, because believe it or not, I just have white and black nano silk whenever I'm using it. I just use a marker to color it. There's no need. You can get all the different colors in the world of nano silk, and I'm sure they're all great, but I just use white and black when I'm using the nano silk. All right, so let's wrap this up. Bring this around. And see, that hackle is going to kind of start sitting down in the grooves of my dubbing. So as you notice, I'm not putting super tight touching wraps of my hackle. That's something I used to do. Is I really didn't even need dubbing, because I just wrap the hackle so tight. But I feel like having the hackle a little more opened up, a little more spaced, looks better, and it functions better, I feel like. So now I got that cut off. I'll pull this tight, put a couple wraps there just for the fun of it. I'll put little Sally Hansen's on my thread. And now we'll do a little whip finish. let down, tighten her up. And you can see I've got, it's kind of hard to tell there, but I've got a nice little red. There you go. You can see a nice little red hot spot on the end, on the head.
You got just a touch of glue in the hackle, just a touch, not glue.
That glue's good enough. Although I don't see it now.
It's like red from the marker, like where the thread like brushed against it. It's okay though. It's pretty.
Okay, there we go. So you can see my hackle comes just below the hook point, which is what I want. The underside of it, the silhouette of it, it's kind of hard to see with the vise there, but you got a nice little silhouette. If I cover this up, you might see a little bit better. The straggle string is going to give it a nice little buggy look to it, and that's it. Got to run. All right, see you, Gary. Thanks so much for hopping on.
Bye,
Thanks,
Gary.
Dave. So Mark and Dave, I didn't hear back from Ken when I asked the question, but what?
Oh, you're asking him what he thought like was the most challenging.
Yep. What are some of the most what are some troubles that you'll have when you're tying this pattern? And I'm going to show you.
Can I show some pictures while
Oh, yes, while you're doing that. Thanks, Gary. We're going to go, Gary, we're getting ready to go over some of the tips on, actually, we're going to break it down a little bit and tie some of these patterns after, or some of the steps after Katie shows off some of these.
So these are
pictures.
Straggle buggers from last week. And I like Ken, this is one of Ken's, I wish that my mouse would like point to the screen, but it's not a PowerPoint. So, but anyway, he has a wet one, and I like that because then you know what it looks like when it's wet.
That's cool.
So he did like a trio of 3 different colors. He had the red and the olive and the purple.
And this is Ken B from Australia.
That's Ken, yes. And then Josh sent in one during the show last week. I think that was it. And then we got another one later in the chartreuse color. And then I got Dave's and Helena. I don't know if she's on here tonight. I think she is.
Yep.
Jay Wilson.
Miss Helena.
And Jimmy Root. So we had some really pretty purple and chartreuse and olive ones that you guys sent in. And I just want to thank you all for doing that. It's the joy of my week.
Oh, yes.
Except for when I see my girls.
And when you...
And John Christopher.
And
my husband.
There you go. Thank you.
Of course, honey. Of course.
Well,
I would never.
No, not at all.
So thanks for sending those in. And I think that what we'll do next week is for those of you guys who give this one a try, are we calling a strangulator? Stragulator. Okay. Today I was doing some cleaning out, and I have a ton of giveaway stuff like that has accumulated from us not being on for so long that I want to give away a bunch of stuff. And the biggest thing I think is maybe a hackle gauge, one of the Whiting Farms ones.
Yeah. So just like,
I don't even know if you can get those anymore.
So just like this right here, you can show that.
Like this one here, except we do have I think the ones that I have are maybe navy or olive green. So yeah, these are pretty cool. So I'm definitely going to throw in one of those, and I'm going to throw in a bunch of other cool stuff too. So
we'll have to put a picture up of all the stuff, maybe this weekend of what all. Yeah. Sometime we'll put it all together.
Tie one up and get into the drawing for that.
Yep. And you don't have to have all the materials.
No.
Just do the best you can.
Yeah, just do the best you can. You can always find something else. Just like the more creative you are, the cooler it'll be.
And while we're talking about it, for those of you, I know Ken B is, for those of you all that are officially supporters or promoters of our channel, we really appreciate it. I would like to, Ken sent a note a while back and said it'd be nice to have some one-on-one instruction. And I was thinking, well, I'm not going to be in Australia anytime soon, but maybe sometime we will, if he comes to the United States, we can do. But then I realized, he's I can't remember if he's a supporter or promoter, but we can go live with just the promoters and supporters. So if you if you'd all want to support the channel, if you could become a supporter, I think it's $4 a month, and a promoter is $9 a month, I believe, and that helps pay for shipping, and it helps just.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but that sounds right.
Yep. But so it's really appreciated. We will, especially if we get requests like Ken sent us, would like to go live just with the people that do that occasionally. So we really appreciate that. So you can really ask questions and don't worry about what you're doing. So back to the deer hair, since Josh said beautiful fly, and John Collins right. That's what I was kind of hinting at earlier was you really don't need a whole lot of hackle, and 4 or 5 years ago I didn't even have dubbing on there. I don't think it was all hackle, and it was fine. They worked, no problem. But I feel like having it to where you can see the dubbing in between allows that hackle to kind of breathe a little bit more. It allows it to have a better footprint on the surface film, and it looks better to the trout, where it comes out more, and it's not quite as dense. Um, that's why when
It's
you
also a lot harder to wrap tons of hackle. Like the more you put on there, the harder it is to get it to all stay and be even and everything.
yeah, and it's also like you can use twice the amount of hackle for no
reason,
other than
yeah.
you think it looks good on Instagram. Um, but so let's talk about deer hair real quick. What kind of deer hair to get? So I tied this one up just for the fun of it. Let's pull this down. And this was using much longer deer hair than I would normally use. So here is the good stuff that I like using from Josh, and this is also from Josh. But you can see this would be stuff that you could use to like spin a bass bug with, or you could do a stimulator with it, but it'd be a much bigger fly. And you're like, well, what's the difference? And the biggest difference is each individual fiber. And Josh could probably ask, really go into a lot more detail than I can. But the bigger the fiber, typically the more hollow it is. Typically, not all the time, but typically the more hollow it is, the more it's going to flare. The smaller, the thinner the fiber, the less it's going to flare out. And for the tips wise, the longer the fiber, typically the longer the tip itself is. And that's really hard to see there, but I'll show you here in just a second. So on the fly itself, you can see how the tail itself is really nothing but tip. So it really didn't flare much at all because the tip is not hollow. It's not going to flare much. And then as you can see, the wing itself, it's not quite as, it'll work fine. I just kind of tied it just for the fun of it. But you can see how long, see the color transition. You got the black tips here, and then this all is kind of the tip area here. And then we get into the part that that's hollow here. So it just doesn't, having hair that's too long and too thick is not going to be quite as good as hair that's a little bit shorter. So you can see the tips are back here, short, fine, black tips here, and it flares just a little bit better. As far as the tail itself, see how that flared out a little more, just like the fly we tied earlier. So getting the right type of deer hair for the flies that you're trying to tie is important. So let's go back to the fly I was working on wrapping hackle and doing this wing, because I feel like that's probably, if you can get your proportions down right. Undo this a bit. We'll start over with it. So proportions are key. I always talk about that. So start your thread right where you want the body or the abdomen to stop, and the thorax where the wing comes out to start. And we're going to bypass, because all that is a tail with straggle string there. So we're going to put a little, it's going to wax our thread. So if you want to use Crystal Flash, you want to use CDC, you want to do whatever you want to here. You can tie all the underwing stuff you want to in here. Now we've got our whatever tied in for the under part. So wrapping good hackle, having that nice smooth body, having a good consistent dubbing noodle. So let's switch over to the side here. I'll show this again. So take your scissors, stick it in, kind of like as a comb to separate it. Stand up with the clump you think you need. And one of the mistakes I used to make, and I still make, is I make my let's see, Katie's going to rearrange this here a little bit. I make my wing too thick. So you don't have to have a super, super thick wing. You don't need a whole lot of material here, especially if you've got an underwing. You don't need much. So, but still cut off more than you think you need because you're going to brush some of it out. Take the tips in your fingertips, rotate your fingertips to spread it all out. Brush it, get that under fur out. Because remember, that absorbs water. That makes it to where the fibers aren't going to stack as well. Look at it, see how we're looking. What type of bobbin are you using? Right now I'm using the Schmahan bobbin. It's just one I always have my nano silk in. All right, stack it. Pull it down, hold it up, see how it looks. Make sure there's no broken tips or anything in there. It looks pretty good. Now we're going to put our wing in. So we'll switch back over to the hook. So I want to set my wing right as long as I think I want it. So we'll say about right there is where I want it to be. I set it straight. So the wing's going to stick up like this. So I don't need to hold it at an angle when I'm tying it in. I want it to be straight, flat with the hook shank. Pinch the whole clump here. Now I'm going to flatten my thread out just a bit because especially with this nano silk, it will if you pull too hard, it will cut through your material or your deer hair. So I put 3 wraps in. You can put 2 wraps in. You can just do 1 if you want to. Now I'll pull tight. Now I'll let go. I'll pull up the butt ends, bring it through, and bring my thread forward to the hook eye. Pull tight again while I'm holding on to my wing. Do it again. Bring my thread forward, tight. Forward, tight. So this is doing a few things. This is making it where the wing's not going to spin around the hook shank. It's also spreading out my tie-in point across the hook shank. Now I try to get most of it. Don't have to get all of it. Take my scissors, push it straight down to where I tied everything in, and cut it off. Now I'll go through and clean this up a little bit. Just like this. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just like that. If you want to, we can cut a little bit off the sides. Usually do that. My wing's sitting a little bit lower than normal because I don't have any sort of body right here. Untwist my thread again. I'm going to slowly bring my thread back to the front or back to my base of my wing. I can go back and forth with it. String it all that trap down and keep that base really smooth. Just like that. So you see how smooth that transition is, except for that one guy right there. And another thing you can do if you want to have fun with it is take your bodkin under here. You can kind of bend your wing a little bit, not like that. Mash it down. A nice little thing. Like I said, normally there'd be a body there, so it really doesn't have anything to push up against. But that's the beginning of that. I've got this hackle fiber here. So it's just it's just a grizzly. Pull this out. So you can see I've got that stripped down. Tie this in. Just like that. And now I'm going to do orange this time. Now this is a little bit, I think this was, does anyone remember what size hook I got this time? I just grabbed one because I was just concerned with the shank itself. So I'm trying to get that nice. So Mark, to give you a tip on keeping your hackle nice and smooth and looking correct, having that dubbing noodle that is, see how it's kind of basically all the same thickness. So bring that thread back up. First wrap behind. And we'll do one more behind. Now with touching wraps. Pull that off. And now we've got our body done. Okay. Now, I think John Collins said 4 wraps is all you need. I'll probably put more than 4 in there, but I'm not going to do a whole bunch. But see that one gap? I can't see it right here. That one gap right there of where I'm missing some dubbing, that's fine because the hackle will probably go right in that gap. You'll never notice it. So my first wrap, and I'm just wrapping straight up and straight down. I don't want it to be on the my deer hair wing. Okay, I want it to be right behind, but not on my deer hair. And then I just bring it forward. As you can see, there's little gaps. So that was probably, that's John Collins is 4, so we'll get one more. We'll lay that in there. And biggest reason I put 3 in front, 3 in back is when I go to cut this off, and I'm getting really tight and close with this. If I don't put those few wraps in front, sometimes I can cut my thread in that section. So let's give this a flick, get rid of that. And that's pretty much how you want your hackle to look, in my mind. John, Mr. Collins, what do you think about that for hackle? Does that meet your expectations? Pull that tight. And always leave yourself that little bit of room behind the hook eye. Don't dub all the way to the hook eye. Leave yourself just that little bit of room for the head of your fly. And you see there's not much of a head. I didn't paint I didn't use a marker on my thread or anything. But I don't want to dub all the way up to the front because that'll force me to crowd my eye. I want my eye to be nice and clear, nice and open. When we were at Jim's place at the Campfire Lodge, was that what it's called now? Campfire Lodge? The campground we're at? The one that Jim owns?
I don't remember. That sounds right.
Where was that? That's when Jim's in Montana, next to Kelly Gallup's place.
Oh yeah, that was a nice place.
When we were in the RV. I
liked that place. They had good food.
Yes, and Jim cooked for us, And that's when Jim, I didn't realize that Jim was the originator of the um, stimulator, but he
But
told us.
that.
He told us, and he showed us the whole article. I said, well, I thought it was. He said, "Don't say his name." I said, "Okay, you got it." But but anyway, so that's a little, not really a hack, but that's just some tips on getting that front hackle kind of the way you want it. Like I said, my wing is not perfect because I don't have a body or anything on there. It's just that. But um, as you can see, the hackle is a lot sparser than you'll see a lot of other people do. But believe it or not, when you go look in fly bins and you're buying a stimulator that's commercially tied, usually that's kind of how it'll look. You'll see the dubbing underneath the hackle. Doesn't make it wrong, doesn't make it right. I'm not saying this is the way you have to do it. Do it whatever makes you happy. Um, and that's that, honey.
Mhm.
So, any other questions, real quick? We don't have time to do a whole nother one, but that little yellow one, I like throwing the small size 16. Like I said, sometimes 18s in headwaters. When and usually in bright yellow. In the fall, I'll do orange. These are bright yellow. And the birds love it, but the trout love it too.
The birds love it so much.
Yeah, yeah. I think they might take it for a yellow Sally because there's a lot of yellow Sally hatches. I don't know, but it works really good for us. So do your variation of the straggle bugger, the stragulator. And Katie, how do they send them to us?
Okay, so you can either email us your picture at demuthflyfishing@gmail.com, or you can get on Instagram and you can post it and then tag us on the actual picture to make sure that we get it. Or if you put it in a story, you can tag us, or you can send it to us in a message on Instagram at Demuth Fly Fishing. So I will put our email address at the top of this chat. And I hope that we get some cool pictures for the drawing because, like I said, I got lots of cool stuff to give away.
Yep. And Jim Wilson, the hook is the Arex Freshwater 530. A lot of times I use a 531, but this is the Arex Freshwater 530. I like that little micro barb on there because a lot of times I like to hang droppers off of them, and if I don't, I can just pinch the barb. No big deal. Dave, I look forward to seeing your go at it. And this, like I said, we found that another brand new hackle gauge, just like this, have different color. These are super, super cool. Anyone has one of these.
Really?
Yes.
I haven't seen that many of them floating around.
That's because they're so rare.
Okay.
When we were visiting Whiting Farms, we picked up a handful of these quite a long time ago, and I've been so stingy with them, we haven't given them out. So we've got at least one left over that we will put in the giveaway thing. So tag the photograph on Instagram so we can see it later on, or email it to us at demuthflyfishing@gmail.com. Thanks to everyone who is officially a supporter or promoter. And guys, you all have a fantastic evening. Have a wonderful weekend, and we look forward to seeing everyone next Wednesday night.
See you later, everybody. Guys. Have a good weekend. See you next week.
Thanks, Patrick and Mark and Nan and Ken B.